Testing, 1, 2, 3. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. And I will point out that for several things, for those of you who've joined us, we started off with an executive session earlier, so we were able to conclude that about 10, 15 minutes ago. And we will now be in our normal regular session. Counselor Natalie Johnson was here earlier. She's not feeling quite well. She was coughing, so she's now at home and she's participating through the magic of television and the internet. So, right. So our next item on the agenda is E, the approval of the agenda. Council, you've had a chance to review it, so I didn't entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the agenda. Second.
Motion is second. Okay. Let's go ahead and vote.
Six to zero in favor.
Okay, thank you. Natalie, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Okay, that's 7 to 0. Okay, thank you. Natalie, can you hear us okay? Can
Yeah,
you say
great.
something?
Yep, it's great. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Okay, hopefully. Looks okay here. Can you hear me now? No, can't hear me?
No, we can't hear you. We can hear you.
Great.
You can hear us?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Great.
All right, let's go and push on then. Okay, great. Okay, next item is public comment on non-agenda items. And this is the time during the meeting when anyone in the public is welcome to make comments about a non-agenda item. We would ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Go ahead, Joan, would you like to come forward? And if you'll give us your name and address. And this is also a time when we typically don't respond to comments, but if you'd also let the city clerk know, fill out the little form. So if we do need to contact you, we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you can get the mic about 3 inches from your mouth, that's good.
Gotcha. Hopefully that's good audio. I'm Joan
Sounds good.
Stang. Live at 204 Crystal Park Road. I'm here with a plea for help. Mayor Graham and city council members, please take a moment to consider the fresh mountain air that we all breathe, the clean water we drink, and the food that we enjoy. Many times these things are taken for granted. Unfortunately, these necessary elements of life are threatened by climate crisis and have been for decades now. Climate crisis is not an isolated issue. It is wreaking havoc on the entire world. It has no bias and no political or economic boundaries. It affects us all. For decades, others have worked to bring these environmental issues to the forefront in hopes of Manitou doing its part to help the planet. To name a few, Corrine Toll, Megan Day, Kelly Snyder, Annie Schmidt, Dr. Karina McKendry, Yarik Critch, resident activist of Resolution 1919, and so many others, to include members of the Climate Action Working Group, currently unrecognized as an official advisory group. Still, there is much work to be done, which leads me to my ask today that Manitou consciously and deliberately implement sustainability measures to ensure the future of our children and grandchildren by establishing a citizen-led advisory group on climate change, addressing 9 areas as outlined in the sustainability ordinance that Samantha Bailey of Colorado Springs helped them pass. Please know that our community is rich with folks educated in all of these areas, people eager to help lead in this effort as volunteers. We ask for your blessing and support of this initiative so that those who have come before us know that their efforts have not been in vain. Let us all do what is right to support our planet today for the children of our future before it is too late. I believe this is the most important endeavor that our community will ever support. And by the way, that's the end of my statement. Thank you for your time. There were some copies that Judy's going to circulate. We'll need the copies back, but they're actually petition copies, and as well as the ordinance from Colorado Springs that I mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Do we have anyone else who wants to speak? Carl, you want to come forward?
Thank you. I'll be succinct. Manitou Springs has a tradition of citizen-led boards contributing their time and energy for the benefit of all. Citizen boards help solicit and amplify citizen feedback into the process of how we govern. Manitou Springs also has a long history of championing sustainability initiatives. Now is the time to recognize that this topic, sustainability, impacts how we live, how we eat, how we get around, how we consume. Please lend your support to the establishment of a Manitou Springs Sustainability Board to ensure a better Manitou Springs for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else would like to speak? Okay. Oh, you need, okay, press the button in the middle there, the green light should come on.
Okay,
Okay, and then if you can get about three, have your mouth about
There
3
we
inches
go.
from the mic. Okay.
great. Okay. My name is Melody Doherty. I live at 106 Ruxton in Manitou Springs. And I think I'll start out by saying that we did gather 162 signatures so far. That's what you'll be seeing tonight. We will be bringing that amount in probably by the end of August. We do have a collective community effort that is supporting the Citizen Advisory, the Sustainability Citizen Advisory Committee. Our experience has been when we've gone door to door, excuse me, that most of the residents in Manitou Springs thought we already had this in place, and we don't. And once they found out that we didn't, they're like, where's the pen? Can I please sign? And I'd like to finish by reading a statement by Dr. Corina McKendry. She was unable to attend tonight, but this is her statement. Research on sustainable cities tells us that cities are most effective at achieving their goals when they have, one, a strong leader in support of sustainability in the city, two, clearly defined goals, three, consistent ongoing support from the community. I strongly encourage the council to establish a sustainability advisory committee to ensure that there is a clear forum for this vital third element. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak to a non-agenda item? I guess not. All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate your input. Next item is our consent calendar. We only have one item on that. That's approval of the May 16th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. If any council would like to discuss that separately, we can do it. If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve and accept.
So moved.
We motion.
Second.
We have a second. Okay, let's vote. And I see it. Natalie, I take that to be an aye. Okay.
7-0 in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the minutes from our last regular meeting are approved. Okay, our first business item tonight is resolution number 1523, a resolution adopting an updated universal fee schedule. And we have our finance department here.
Good evening. Periodically, we bring the universal fee schedule.
Becca, as unnecessary as it seems, I guess I better ask you to introduce yourself.
Oh,
Yeah.
Rebecca Davis, Finance Director for the City of Manitou Springs for multiple years.
Okay, and Nicole,
And Nicole Ortega, I'm the finance supervisor.
thanks. Since it's all being recorded, I think that's best policy. Great.
Yes.
You have the floor.
Okay, so back around 2014, all the fees were pulled out of the code so that they could just be approved by resolution rather than by ordinance. So periodically, we bring the fee schedule before city council when we have changes. So that is what we've done tonight. And there were several changes, and I'm going to go through them. First of all, I want to bring to your attention the fact that there's a mention of street cut increases. And that is actually, we're requesting that that be pulled at this time because that requires more discussion. And that is actually on page 15 of the fee schedule.
I missed
So-
it, Becca. What are you pulling or what are you suggesting we pull off of? that?
It's this page 15 of page 17, or if you're looking at the packet, it is page 46.
Oh, so you're suggesting the entire page be reconsidered later for the excavation?
Wow, I would love to do that. In this case, it's really just section 12.06, cutting, refilling, and resurfacing of public streets. And it says reference newly paved roads. So it was increasing from 250 to 350. But staff has been talking about that, and we want to talk about it some more. So we want to pull that out of this fee schedule for tonight. But everything else will stay in. So the EV electric charging fees, that's on page 11 or page 42. And that is brand new charges for us. Right now, we have some charging stations and vehicles are being allowed to charge there for free. That is costing the city in terms of electricity. And we're always supposed to recapture our costs whenever we can. So this is a schedule that was recommended by Colorado Springs Utilities because this is a new area for us. And this is what they've determined to be the cost. And then we've added a 15% admin fee on over the CSU rates. I'm not going to go into the details on this unless you request it. And then the second was emergency transport services. And this is on page 7 or page 38 of your packet. So it's page 7 of the fee schedule, page 38 of the packet. And once again, this is a new area for us. This is that emergency transport department that we've added. And advanced life support level 2 requires more supplies and things. Okay.
Additional equipment. It's additional equipment that is used that gives it a support level 2. And then we just added to be determined if they determine any additional costs in the future are going to be allowed. At this time, there are not any additional fees that we can charge for. It's only the ones that we have included on.
But since this is such a new service, we're still learning as we go. So, and then after that, okay, now this is that page where I'd reference street cut, but it's those other charges. And once again, that was the page 15 or page 46 if you're going by the packet. And those fees are really, it's just the compaction test deposit. Before it was 500 and it was determined by staff that that was not sufficient. So they want to increase it to 1,000. And then it was realized that under inspection fees, while there's multiple other ones, we didn't have an inspection fee for inspecting the drainage. So they want to add in a $75 for that, which is equivalent to the other inspection fees. And then we do have just the fact, I think they just wanted to put it in as a note that excavation on private property, there is no permit fee on that. That's also in red there. So that's a new addition to the fee schedule, even though it is 0. And then finally, on Bar Trail, there needed to be a non-reservation clarification, and that's page 9 of the fee schedule or page 40 of the packet. So it was that's 10.12.010B metered parking on street. Now, like I said, this is under the bar trail. So it's when you don't have a reservation in the bar lot. It's the first citation $70, and then second is 100, and then the third is 150.
Can you clarify that? I couldn't understand what that meant. Second citation after 2 hours, so I get $70 at first, and then 2 hours and 1 minute later, I can get another $100 ticket. But then the third offense after 2 hours, does that mean after 2 more hours?
That is an additional 2 hours.
I think the word more
And-
needs to be there. Otherwise, I don't see how we have the right to charge 2 different prices for the same. Well, I see it's third. Yeah, I would. I mean, I would respectfully put the word more in there because otherwise it's,
Consider it done.
I didn't know what it meant, but yeah, thanks.
And this has already been done. It's just that they made a part A and a part B to clarify that you needed a reservation as well. So it's not really making a change. It's just a clarification.
Yeah, but it's not clear. That's my point. To me, it's not clear. Maybe other people
And
knew what it
I can
meant.
add more.
It didn't make sense to me and I thought about it for quite a while. Thank you.
Okay, and then finally, in an effort to be more efficient, I added in the court fees, which were not originally in here when this was first created. I added in the court fees so that a person could go to just one document to look at all the fees. So I thought I was being more efficient and saving people time. Turns out that section 6.34080 states what the judge has the ability to do. And one of those things that the judge can do is set the court fines. So by putting it into this document, what I was basically saying was the judge doesn't have the ability to set the court fines. City council does. So by adding them in here, I was getting in conflict with our own codes. And that this has been pointed out to me. So we've just gone ahead and removed them. They're now a separate document. They're still available. It's just that the judge sets those. I think she presents them to you maybe once a year, but she's the one that sets those. So my apologies for doing something with actually breaking our own code.
It's okay. It was well intentioned, I think. Great. Sorry, was that everything you wanted to touch on?
Just the pros are always that we're trying to capture our cost. And the con is now people have to go to, for the court fee thing, people have to go to a separate document to see that. So it's not as efficient.
Maybe that'll incentivize them to behave themselves. John, do you have a question?
Yeah, Becca, with regard to the clarification on page 9, the 10.12.010 metered parking on street. So what happens right now? Can somebody answer me right now in terms of when metered parking on street failure to pay or expired meter? So what's the
This
fine
is
right
pretty,
now?
this is pretty much already in effect. We were just asked to add this for a clarification so that.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So that's already been in effect. Okay. Okay. I just want to clarify since it wasn't over there in the black column. Okay. And is that also true for the second citation after 2 hours? That was already in effect too?
That is correct.
All three of these things were already in effect.
Yes.
We're just clarifying it. Thank you very much.
Nancy?
Thank you. On the advanced life support level 2, is the $300 in addition to the 1925?
Yes, it is in addition.
Thank you. That wasn't immediately clear to me.
Is there anything that I can do to make that more clear? what language would you like me to add?
You can write,
In
this is
addition?
in addition
Okay,
to advanced life support transport of 1925.
thank you.
May I ask a question also? on
Yeah,
that
go ahead,
same
Julie.
point? How did we get these numbers? Did Keith talk to Colorado Springs or to AMR? I'm sure there's some,
This is the
idea.
information directly from Medicaid. All
oh,
these
that's what
are,
Medicaid pays, is
this-
1725?
right. These
And
are the
is that
pay-
typical for ambulances to go with the minimum? I mean, no one pays less than Medicaid.
If we
why-
want further information, this is what we were told that we could do the billing for.
Oh, so you don't
want-
know if
do-
that's customary or
do you-
not for ambulance companies or?
I think that this is what it is customary that these are the prices. I don't remember all of the details, but if you want me to follow up, I can do that.
I'd like to know because at least with respect to other medical services, the provider of the service gets a lot more money from every source other than Medicaid. I think even Medicare pays more. Doesn't Medicare pay more than Medicaid? I mean, Medicaid pays like less than if you hire a plumber per hour. It's crazy. So I didn't want to necessarily accept that we're only going, to, if my private insurance company, someone's private regular insurance company is accustomed to paying 2,300 per transport. I hate for us to be billing 1,725 just because that's what Medicaid will pay us. I mean, obviously, if we're charging more and Medicaid's only going to give us a 1,725, then we can write off the balance. In fact, I think that's what Keith said he was going to do when he presented to us. But yeah, I would like more information on whether we're entitled to be paid more or whether that's customary for other insurers besides Medicaid. That's just me. Obviously, I don't have the right to direct staff. It just depends if everyone else is interested in this.
Denise,
Just a couple of quick things. This says Medicare, not Medicaid. So if you look at it, it says Medicare here, not Medicaid, additional Medicare expenses. The other thing is when we presented these costs to you in this, it was about the middle. It wasn't the most expensive AMR, wasn't as expensive as AMR. It was right in the middle. And then we'll bill and try to collect as much as we can and then go from there. So it wasn't the least emergency services and it wasn't the most expensive. They did the research and they did about the middle whenever you approve
Oh,
this.
and it
before.
wasn't based on Medicare either?
Not the first couple, but the 300 is, they're asking at the end for additional Medicare expenses that will be covered. So if you read that in
Oh,
red.
I
it
see.
says-
I was referring to basic life support transport and advanced life support transport. I was referring to those numbers. I'm not too worried if it's going to be 300 or 350. But those two numbers you're saying are just average in our community. Okay, then I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Mr. Shada.
So is TBD going to be in here? Is that what that is?
I would like to leave it as to be determined that just in case they make any changes and we can add additional charges. I don't want to be restricted by what we have in our fee schedule.
Well, the only thing that I'm uncomfortable with is I believe that Colorado just passed a law about disclosing medical fees and whatnot. And that those aren't all kind of just whatever happens. So I think we ought to figure out what that is. I'm really uncomfortable with just having whatever.
Then we will take it out because
Yeah.
at this time, there are no additional charges.
Right,
We're doing this as a safeguard.
right. So it seems like to me, if we come up with some kind of apologetic in terms of for doing that, it seems like to me, we ought to have a number and have it be disclosed instead of having it be some mystery fee.
Oh, but I don't know if you're talking about the same thing.
Yes, I am. I'm
'cause
saying
it's
I
not-
don't want TBD in.
No, I hear you, but it sounds like what she's saying is that just means that someday we'll come along and we'll put a number in there, but until we do, we can't charge a dime. Right now, all that Medicare would possibly pay anyway is an extra 300. And then you're saying, you're assuming that we could just charge whatever and then put the number in the
Well,
following week.
No, I'm just saying that I'm uncomfortable having that line that says additional Medicare expenses is allowed TBD. I'm hoping that's just a notation that we're working on that in the
It's
future.
not that we are working on it. It's that nothing else at this time is allowed. So we are being reimbursed by all of the expenses that we are allowed at this time. And if they were to allow further reimbursements in the future, then we would have that in our fee schedule. But we can probably do that at a later time if those expenses come up.
So that's my point is, it seems like to me that's a notation for us of a placekeeper, but it doesn't belong in the fee schedule. That red line isn't going to be in the fee schedule. That's what I'm asking, right? That we don't have in the fee schedule additional Medicare expenses as allowed to be decided.
So what we can do is if additional fees come up that we can charge, we'll bring back the fee schedule.
That's my proposal, is that we know
We'll
what
just
that is.
remove this
Because
part.
right now that's not in there, Julie. It's that the red stuff is additions. It's not in there.
No, I understand.
That's just my pain, that I just don't want us having something in the fee schedule, which is, oh, get what it's whatever we decide it to be.
Okay.
I don't have any problem with it being a notation that once we understand what those charges are, that we amend the fee schedule and we put them in there. I think we just ought to be transparent in terms of what those fees are, as opposed to mystery amounts.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Nancy,
I move we approve resolution number 1523, a resolution adopting an updated universal fee schedule, removing 12.06 and under EMS transport services, removing additional Medicare expenses allowed TBD. And there were a couple of other minor editorial things that you had captured that were, I don't know. I will trust you to make them.
we have a motion. Okay. I think that was basically to add the word more on the parking.
The additional cost of the level 2, or did you capture that? Okay.
It had to do with the parking at Bar Trail, the penalty for the additional, those 2-hour increments to add the word more. Add more. So if that's understood as a motion, would look for a second.
Second.
Can we have a motion and a second? Any further discussion? Natalie, were you able to hear all that?
I do. I have something for discussion.
You heard? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay, we're going to go ahead and vote. Natalie, are you ready?
No.
Oh, I'm
I want to
sorry.
talk. I want to talk.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear
I'm
me?
sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I'd like to talk about the electric vehicle charging fees, really quick. I was contacted by, a constituent, and he requested that, we not charge, for the vehicles, if you're a resident. I think it's something to discuss. I've considered it, a bit, and I think that there's the potential for us to maybe not charge outside of our regular parking fee hours, so that it would be free from 6 p.m. until 7 a.m., which would capture residents. I think there's a chance that we can also waive the fee for residents, or I think there's an opportunity for us to discuss it further as part of a larger conversation when we talk about e-bike rebates and the effectiveness of the trams and other things, but I just wanted to mention that. So I don't know if there's any feedback from other council members to discuss this today, but I would certainly like to bring it up at a minimum later on as we talk about a larger conversation around how we are, I don't know, supporting environmentally friendly.
Natalie, I think that's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant idea.
I concur.
I really like that. I like the off hours idea. I think the only thing I think we ought to consider is that if residents park their vehicle there, that we keep in place the penalty for occupying the spot.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Unless the maker wants to amend it, we should entertain that motion. Yeah, Nancy, go ahead.
I would just like to say, I'm all for discussing it in the context of other transportation issues, but I do not want to change my motion at this point. I'd like this to go forward at this point, fee schedule itself to go forward at this point, and then just ask that we do discuss this in the larger context of e-bikes and e-vehicles and so on. I think that there's a lot of pros and cons that need to be discussed before we pros and cons and a bigger picture.
Can I make one suggestion that we ask?
Yeah, John, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
So I'm sorry, gang, listen, okay. I try to be fair with everybody and let you speak and recognize you, but we're getting a little too haphazard here. So let's get focused and let's just try and get through this. Okay, John, you have the floor.
Sorry about that. Could we direct staff to ask how that local charging waiver would work? So we could at least get a report, Natalie, on how that would look, given the infrastructure that's being installed there, so we
Look,
know how that would
Okay,
work.
look, tell you what, we can talk about this after. We have a motion on the floor, okay? If we have anything that's germane to the motion, we can discuss it now. We'll get to your point then, John. Denise?
Mayor, one clarification for the motion, if Mayor Pro Tem would allow this. We're not asking for 12.09 to be completely gone. We're asking that what's in red is we don't adopt that and we keep what was in black, what's already been adopted. We're not prepared to make those statements that's in red or to up it, but to keep the 250 and the 100. So if that is a friendly amendment, I just wanted to mention that. It's on page 15, so the motion would read 12.09 or 12.06 as previously adopted to keep that.
Yes, thank you. I will adopt that as a friendly amendment.
And I'm sorry, was it, Julie, did you second?
I
Sorry, Michelle, you second. Okay, are you okay with that? Okay. So now do we have an understanding of the motion? Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote. Natalie, how do you vote? In favor, okay.
Seven to zero in favor.
Okay, thank you. And okay, so this was only on the agenda, but let's be real quick here. John, you had a comment relative to the electric vehicle thing.
All I was trying to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be rude or upset you in any way. I just thought that Natalie had kind of waved in and she was sitting there waving her hands. And I don't think she kind of felt like, you know, she got participated with the main motion. So I just was trying to endorse her idea that we have some local incentives and we figure out how to have that discussion. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
we'll address that in the future then. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on. The next item is Colorado Energy Offices Performance Contracting. Okay, and Becca and Nicole, thank you very much. Feel free to come back when you need to change things. Okay, ladies, and if you'd introduce yourselves and your titles and your affiliations.
Good evening. I'm Kate Sipla with Schneider Electric.
Good evening, Dylan Southern with the Colorado Energy Office.
And do you all have a copy of the presentation? Are we we'll put it up online. Okay,
If you'd
great.
introduce yourselves and your titles and your affiliations.
Good evening. I'm Kate Sipla with Schneider Electric.
Good evening, Dylan Southern with the Colorado Energy Office.
And do you all have a copy of the presentation? Are we we'll put it up online. Okay,
If you'd
great.
introduce yourselves.
All right. All right, so we met with you guys a few months ago. If you'll remember, the results of that meeting was that you all agreed to allow Schneider to do a proof of concept
at your buildings to look at any energy operational improvements. So today, our first goal would be to have Kate share the findings of that proof of concept. And then the second item will be to vote on whether you all will move forward with an RFP with the Colorado Energy Office to actually select the firm that will perform a more detailed look at your buildings, what we call an investment grade audit. Let me do a slide change here. Just a quick reminder. So the program that the Energy Office is showcasing today is called the Energy Performance Contracting Program. Essentially, this graph up here shows the structure of that program. That first column, that's your existing operating cost. Using the Energy Performance Contracting Program, you'll select a firm through this RFP process. It's a standardized process we have templates for. They'll work with you, visit your facilities. From there, they'll be able to identify any facility improvements that also have any operational or cost savings associated with them. Those savings are actually used to pay for the project over a period of time. So that's your third column showing that those savings are used as payment. And once that project is paid for, you guys benefit from having new equipment and also keeping those savings now in your budget. And so I'll hand it over to Kate and she'll talk a little bit more about her proof of concept.
Okay, so my team at Schneider came out over the last several months. We did some on-site site visits, took lots of pictures of your buildings. We collected an enormous amount of utility data. So we've condensed everything into just a couple slides here, but you do have a copy of the full business case with some supplement information if you need. And, you know, in having several meetings with city management and city staff, we identified some priorities that could be addressed with a potential project like this. And so the things that you see on the screen here are some of the items that could be potentially taken care of through an energy performance contract. We know that sustainability is important to your community. We heard that earlier this evening. We hope they hear that, you know, the city itself is trying to be a leader and set an example by making improvements to its own facilities, in addition to making things nicer for the community. So obviously energy reduction, that's a big driver. It's the way that we often pay for these projects. According to state statute, these projects must be self-funding. Energy costs savings are a big part of that cash flow. Obviously, modernizing your facilities and creating more resilient infrastructure is necessary when we're, you know, experiencing more extreme weather events all the time. So we want to make sure our buildings are a safe haven for our community in times of crisis. Building comfort, this room in particular, we know is not always comfortable. So there are some things in here that can potentially help address that. We know that City Hall itself also has some comfort issues, and things are running when they shouldn't be, or things are running and fighting one another in different offices. So there's some potential for energy savings there. And then there are actually some opportunities for increasing revenues and reducing operating and maintenance costs, thanks to these improvements, which I'll go over in a moment. And we know that sustainability is really important to everyone in this room, as well as the community. So this project is going to help make a big step forward and show that the city is leading by example. And then identifying new funding sources. We know that grants are always great, but city staff doesn't always have the bandwidth to write those or seek out help to write those. So part of the beauty of working in conjunction with the Colorado Energy Office and an energy service company, one like Schneider, they can help you apply for a lot of the federal grants that are available right now. So we can take advantage of some of those funds. Next slide, please. So a quick overview of what we evaluated. You'll see the buildings that we took a look at there on the left. I will note that the library and the aquatic center, after we did our analysis, we decided to take those off of the list at this time. The library is going to be funded by other sources. So it's still planning to have some renovations done there, but not in the scope of this project. In the aquatic center, it was one of those things where when you do a kitchen remodel and you want to change out your countertops, then all of a sudden you're changing out the sink and the faucet and the backsplash, and all of a sudden we're in a full kitchen remodel. The systems in place at the aquatic center are towards the end of their useful life. And the challenge here is that those systems have a very long payback period. And when we're looking for energy savings and operational cost savings to pay for this project over a 15 to 20-year period, we're just not sure that that's going to fit in the cash flow. However, if grants do get awarded throughout the process of working on a project like this, that could mean the aquatic center could come back into the scope of this performance contract, and some improvements could be made there. But just for the purposes of our high level analysis that we did, the aquatic center came off the list for now. So you'll see some photos here. That very first photo on the left, that's the HVAC systems in City Hall. And I come from a mechanical background. Things have been moved around quite a bit. They could definitely use some help. So one of the things that a project like this would address is definitely getting those mechanical systems working efficiently and updating them for, modernization purposes, and making sure that folks that work in this building and enjoy this building are comfortable. We saw a lot of gas furnaces. That's that second photo that you see there. We have 2 gas furnaces in this room. We know everyone's making a big push to get away from natural gas and move towards electric appliances and heating and cooling systems. So that could definitely fall into this. Lots of rebates and incentives available for that now. We saw some lighting opportunities really across the board. There's kind of a hodgepodge. There's some LED, as fixtures have been failing, Public Works has made a concerted effort to upgrade those to LED when they fail. But, this project would allow for all of the remaining fixtures that are not LED to be updated, and also have some consistency across the board to make things easier on your maintenance staff. And then the last photo there, that's the pavilion. That's right behind us over here. We saw that as a potential site for some solar panels. We know that renewable energy is a big part of your sustainability plan. So we worked really hard to try and identify some areas where we could add some renewable energy components. Some other specific items I want to highlight. We believe that just due to the cash flow for the items we identified, there might actually be room to add cooling to this room, to Memorial Hall in particular. So even though that's adding energy load, that could be offset by the fact that we know this room is used for rentals. And by making it more comfortable year round, you're more likely to recoup rental revenue that could help offset that additional energy cost. So these are the types of strategies we think about, not just energy saving, but offsetting costs whenever possible. Another really large portion of what might make this project incredibly financially feasible is updating the water meters all over town, all over the city. I know that this has been a priority for the city manager for quite some time. The current water meters that are in place are reaching the end of their useful life. And it's really the upfront cost of that change out that's prohibited the city from moving forward on that. So the reason that it fits nicely into energy performance contracting is because, as the meters age, they're a little less effective and accurate. So there's potential revenue loss there by not being able to capture the true usage. And in addition to that, we could repurpose the person who's physically driving around and collecting that data, and their time can be spent working on a multitude of other projects. I'm sure Public Works has a to-do list a mile long. So, that would free up an entire potential full-time employee or a part-time employee to get some other things done. So in addition to that, we think that there's about $100,000 in additional revenue annually that could be recouped by updating those water meters. And that $100,000 a year over 20 years, that adds up very quickly to help fund some other things. So we're hopeful that can fit into it. There's been a lot of talk about EV charging tonight. As far as the municipal owned fleet goes, we understand that there's interest from the city to move the municipal fleet over to electric. So I think this is a great time to do a pilot program within performance contracting and have that pilot program essentially paid for, and have a great way to do a proof of concept there to see if it's something that'll work for the entire fleet or a part of it, for the short and the long term. So next slide, please. So the financial prospectus that we came up with, again, we collected quite a bit of utility data from every municipal owned meter, whether it was electric, gas, or water. However, the city does not charge itself for water use. So for example, the sinks in this building, when people use the restrooms, the city's not charging itself for that water. So unfortunately, there were no savings that we could recoup from the water side. So we focused on natural gas and electricity. Overall, the city spends almost $500,000 a year on utilities. So that gave us a pretty good baseline to work with. So we think just based on the buildings that we evaluated and the potential scope items that could be possible, we took a very conservative approach to potential energy savings and came up with about $30,000 a year in energy savings, utility savings. The operational savings, again, I mentioned things like making the lights easier for public works to deal with, or if they're LEDs, they don't need to be changed out as often. So you don't have those labor hours and the cost of the bulbs. And over a 20-year period, that adds up. So we think there's about another $38,000 a year in operational savings that could be achieved. And then the extra $100,000 a year in potential increase in water revenues. Again, that's based on a lot of our project experience, changing out water meters for other cities. It's about a 5% increase. In addition to that, we talked a little bit about the federal grants that are available. You'll see some CEO programs and DOLA programs. There are some state available funds right now. There's a multitude of programs out there for energy efficiency and sustainability. So the time is right to pursue these. Energy service companies often have grant support. Some do, some don't, but obviously it's becoming much more prevalent with all the money that's available right now. So with all of the programs you see on the screen, that could be a potential $3 to $8 million worth of grants available that you would be eligible to apply for based on the scope that we found on our high level analysis here. And I'll say that, the average win rate for a federal grant right now sits at about 53%. So I took a pretty conservative number. The total funding number is about $4.5 million. So that means between the $168,000 a year we're saving on utilities and operations and additional water revenues over a 20-year period, plus about, $1 million in grant awards. Let's take that low end of the grants and rebates that are available, 3 million. A 53% win rate would be 1.5 million in grants. Let's keep it conservative and say $1 million. That puts us right about $4.5 million on the conservative side for what could be possible in a project like this. Again, these are just high level numbers. I tried to keep them very conservative. Do we have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just am confused by what you just said. Self-funding total is the amount you anticipate the city would have to shell out after receiving a conservative average amount of grants. Is that what you're saying? Or have you already deducted the 168 grand a year? Or is that gross or net? If you could explain that number a little.
Sure.
More.
So the $4.5 million, that is the 168,000 times 20 years plus $1 million from grant awards. So the $168,000 in savings from doing these improvements. And that means that you would have $4.5 million worth of work that could be done. So,
But it could be done now, not in 20 years.
Correct. So it would be done now. And then over time, over that 20 years, those improvements will give you 20 years worth of savings.
Right. Oh, okay. So this page doesn't tell us the cost of the project.
The cost of the project would be $4.5 million or less because it must be self-funding by the savings. Does that make sense?
Yes, and was there some contractual provision or something about if the self-funding didn't work out that you mentioned back in January? I forget
I
how that.
did.
What is-
Yes.
Can you remind us what that was?
Yes. So contractually by state statute, these projects must be self-funding. So under these programs, there's 3 years of measurement and verification that is required by the state. So a company like Schneider would administer that measurement and verification, and then the energy office team checks all of those numbers and makes sure everything is as it should be. If there is a shortfall, so if we predicted you would save $100 and you only save 92, then the energy service company would have to write you a check for the $8 to make you whole. So this is a guaranteed savings program. Again, there's 3 years of required measurement and verification. You can choose to continue the measurement and verification with your firm, your partner, if you choose. There is, a small annual fee for that, but some folks like to continue that process just for the peace of mind. Others say that they well exceed the savings that were predicted in the first place, so they're comfortable, just writing it out. Or some folks decide they want to pick it back up again after maybe 10 years, just to make sure everything is as it should be. But yes, those first 3 years, it must work out, and the energy office will confirm that.
And the self-funding analysis is done at the end of the 3 years, or is that a 5-year? When do they determine whether or not we've succeeded in recouping money we've spent?
Every year for the first 3 years.
Oh, every year? a
It's
check would be
annually.
written.
Yes, so
And
that
it's written by Schneider or your competitor or some other entity?
this is all of the oversight is from the Colorado Energy Office. So
the energy office would be the one to reimburse us if
the energy
predictions fell
service,
short?
the energy service company, Schneider, or a, similar company would be the one writing you the check.
Oh, it is Schneider.
Yes. So
How are your balance sheets?
we're a global company, so we're fine. And I will say, we have had some shortfalls. Things happen. Things like weather can change what happens in a building and the energy usage. And I would say it's fractional. We have about a 0.26% rate of shortfalls. We have made good on all of those. And in fact, a lot of those clients are our biggest advocates, because not only did we make them whole, we also said, well, why is this problem happening in the first place? Let's go fix that. We thought we did our calculations right. We owned up to it. So we didn't just write the check. We actually looked for the root of the problem and fixed it so it didn't happen the next year.
And how long has Schneider been in business?
Since the late 1800s. So
my gosh.
we're not going anywhere.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I know this is a lot of information on this slide, and the financials can be a little hard to grasp, but sure, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Judith, go ahead.
So I'm just curious what you factor in when you're deciding for, I'll use, for example, the solar panels on the park mansion's roof. So do you factor in the cost of maintenance and repair when you're doing because so it's really in your best interest to be very conservative and not, do anything that you'll have to write us a check for. So I appreciate that part of it, but
Yes.
I'm just concerned about that who pays for things like, for example, solar panel damage and repair. Is that kind of factored into the projected annual savings over time? Because over
Yes.
20 years, things are gonna wear out and break. And so
Yes.
can you address that?
I can, yes. And in fact, we can even include things like HVAC maintenance contracts, annual contracts within the context of these projects, because we know that things are only as good as they are maintained, right? And so when we commission a building and we fix everything up and turn everything on, there are a lot of moving parts. And even right now with the renovation, there are walls being moved around City Hall. We need to take those things into account. So maintenance is definitely a factor. We don't want to put a system or a piece of equipment in that will be a burden financially or organizationally. That's definitely not the intent. So we do factor in the cost of maintenance over time. And in fact, maintenance contracts can even be included in the cost of the project. So then it takes it off your operating budget for however long you want to include that contract within the EPC. So that's another way to free up some operational cash. Of course, it has to fit into the cash flow of the project too. So certain things can fit in, certain things cannot, but we're not going to put any scope in here that's not going to pay for itself over that specified time period, whether it's 15, 18, 20 years. Usually 20 years is about the maximum. We can't finance and we can't do these projects for longer than the useful life of these systems. So 20 years is pretty typical. Does that answer your question? Okay, you're welcome.
Go ahead if you want to continue with the
Any other
presentation.
questions? Okay, great. I'll hand it back over to Dylan. So hopefully the business case was helpful. I know there's a lot of supplemental information in there that was more just to get the creative juices flowing about what could be, potentially included in a project like this. But, I would say the end result of the business case is that things look good. And if you're excited about getting $4.5 million worth of improvements done, that essentially doesn't cost you anything, then, the recommendation would be to move to next steps, which Dylan will describe.
All right, so Kate did a good job, preparing that business case, and it does look like that energy performance contracting might be the appropriate model to achieve all of these facility improvements. So looking at this slide, right now we're at what's called ESCO selection. ESCO means Energy Service Company. So within the state's program, we actually have 16 what we call pre-qualified ESCOs. They have 5-year contracts with the Colorado Energy Office and have been vetted by our group for financial health. They worked in the state previously. So, we feel confident they can deliver a feasible project. So I think you guys would most likely be interested in doing an RFP process. So our office provides a template RFP solicitation, as well as a toolkit that has questions and just some best practices for this RFP solicitation process. So we do have those 16 pre-qualified firms. Often communities understand that maybe they don't want to review 16 responses. And so you are free to shortlist. So maybe you only allow 5 of those firms to respond to your RFP, however you choose. Our office will support you as long as it aligns with your procurement policies. So next, once you do go through that RFP process, you select your firm, then you sign what's called an investment grade audit. So that investment grade audit, it's the detailed building assessment. Kate provided, a high level analysis of some potential improvements that you guys could make at your facilities. This phase will actually be going into the buildings, letting you know how many LEDs, where do you need HVAC upgrades, and actually assigning a dollar amount as well as specified products for those measures. So you'll sign an investment grade audit contract. Again, that's a template contract that the AG's office developed in accordance with our office. Our team at the Energy Office, we review that contract with you, with your selected ESCO. Once that's signed, you actually go into the real meat of that investment grade audit. So that's like I said, the on-site analysis. There's quite a few milestone meetings within this investment grade audit. We call them the 30, 60, 90. Our staffed engineers participate in all of those meetings alongside your team. So we're aware that often communities in Colorado don't necessarily have energy managers on staff. And so that's where the Energy Office's engineers really step in to review some of those technical deliverables alongside you. At the end of this investment grade audit, you receive really that investment grade audit report and project proposal. So that's a list of all of the findings as well as a cost to do the work. It will be presented to you guys probably in a similar format as we are right here. Our office, again, our engineers will support you guys through reviewing that project proposal. that looks good with everyone in the council, you move into what we call the energy performance contract or the implementation phase of the project. Again, we do have that standardized EPC contract template that you guys are welcome to use. We'll review it with you. And then that's what really kicks off that construction phase. Construction typically takes about 6 months to a year, depending on the scope of work. And then at the end of that construction period, our office receives a post-installation report, basically the as-built documentation of what the project includes. Our engineers review it, and then that, kicks off that measurement and verification period that Kate was referencing before. So by state statute, we require 3 years of measurement and verification. We will receive annual reports from that ESCO. Our engineers review those reports, and we double check to make sure that you are achieving that guaranteed energy or operational savings. Any questions about kind of this process?
Council, any questions? Denise, would you like to comment on this or about the process?
No, I will say one of the things that the water meters would help with is leaks and a leak detection. So if somebody has a leak, we would be able to identify that very quickly and would help us with repairs and moving. So that's one of the reasons for the water meters. They're about 15 years, and that's usually their end of life. I would say we only have maybe 5 more years max with the water meters that they'll have to be replaced at some point in that time frame.
Okay, thank you. Julie?
Little off topic, but a water meter question. So the water meter may not be capturing, the old ones that we have may not be capturing all the usage. Is it equally likely that our water meters are overcharging us? Which does it mess up only in one direction?
It almost always errs on the side of not charging enough. Usually the decimal points its accuracy can handle, those go down. So I would say 99.5% of the time when you upgrade your water meters, you will recoup more revenue.
Council, other questions? Nancy?
Is there any chance that the cost of all these improvements that you're preliminarily recommending would exceed 4.5 mil?
There is a very good chance. And like I said, if additional grant funds are able to be contributed to the project, that means you have room for more scope. There's more wiggle room in that cash flow. So any grant awards are just gravy. So some of those wish list items, things like the aquatic center, for example, we currently don't have that in any of the scope. That could grow the project. We could find, after doing a study for a month or 2 on the water meters, that's what's recommended. It's, let's study how they're operating now so that we can calculate potential revenue increases that could be captured. We could find that, we predicted 5% initially, but maybe it's a 9% increase. Maybe they're in really poor shape currently, and we didn't realize that. So now we have, instead of $100,000 a year, we've got $175,000 a year over that 20-year period to help fund some other work. So $4.5 billion is probably the lowest project size. It can grow from there, but again, it all has to be self-funding. It all has to pay for itself. So if $4 million worth of self-funding construction work is exciting, then we recommend moving to next steps.
Okay. Julie?
So what you just said, do I understand correctly then that we don't really have to worry about the cost of the project, because once the cost of the project is established, if we have a $7 million project and we can only get funding for 5 million with your efforts, with your help, then we just reduce the project down to the 5 million and we just take the other stuff off the table. We're not mandated to take our own money and spend it to do the whole 9 yards. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, that's absolutely
Okay.
correct. So, we do find that sometimes, once we dig into the very nitty gritty details, we may find, okay, well, maybe there aren't as much savings as we predicted out of this one building or this certain system. And we make adjustments accordingly. So you're never going to be left on the financial hook for something that you didn't want. And this is very much a co-authored solution. We'll work very closely with the city to say, okay, it looks like we're maybe a little over budget. Our cash flow won't support a project this size. Here's 2 scope items that could potentially be taken off the table. Which one matters more to you? We will ask that question and you get to decide what parts and pieces you feel are best for your needs. And if you're not comfortable doing a $15 million project, that's also understandable. That's a lot of work and a lot of money. You could break it into a couple different phases, for example. So those 30, 60, 90% milestone meetings, those are great opportunities to say, okay, here's where the project is looking financially. Here's the potential scope. Is there anything you want to add to the wish list? Is there anything that can come off? It's very much a fluid process up until about the 90% meeting.
Judith.
Thank you. So when it gets to the investment grade audit phase, is that a cost that the city pays for? And if so, what is the typical costs for an IGA?
It's on the next slide. All right, so to answer your question specifically, that is a cost that the city would pay for, and it's based on square footage of your facility and also distance from our office. So we have a standardized rubric that we use to determine the cost for these investment grade audits across Colorado. I believe for your project, based on square footage, that number is somewhere around $11,000.
$10,903.
Perfect. Okay. $10,903. The nice thing about this process is if you do move forward with the construction or implementation of the project, that line item is moved into that total project cost. And so it too becomes kind of included in that self-funding model. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Other questions or comments from council?
I may make one quick comment about the IGA cost. So if you go through the investment grade audit and a financially viable solution is not able to be found, you're not on the hook for anything. That's part of the program rules. So if your selected ESCO partner is not able to produce a viable project throughout the course of the IGA, you don't owe them anything. If they do put a viable project together during the investment grade audit and you choose not to move forward with construction, then you would pay that $10,903 back to the ESCO to essentially thank them for their time. And I can tell you there is a lot of engineering and an awful lot of personnel and time and effort that goes into these investment grade audits. They can be anywhere from 2 to 6 months long for a community of this size. So when you think about how much information you're getting for that amount, it's a pretty darn good deal. And so the Energy Office has done a good job at keeping that cost low to encourage folks to want to move through this process.
Thank you. I guess I have one question, at least one question. For instance, you recommended the idea of putting solar panels on the mansion's pavilion out here. From an energy standpoint, that's an intriguing idea. From a Manitou Springs standpoint, life is not that simple. We have an historic preservation code. So
we are well aware.
Okay, so yeah, we would need you to get with staff before you delve too deeply into this and see what kinds of things are prohibited and what could be facilitated. Now, the roofs up at Public Works might be fair game to put solar panels on.
Exactly. And that's another reason why we decided the library would not be a good fit, because every inch of that library is considered historic. So it would have been a challenge to make any of these improvements without maintaining the historical character of that building. So I do think it's good that you're pursuing a different avenue there. The topic of the windows in City Hall has also come up. We do know that they're historic. So at the same time, they're very drafty, and a lot of heat and air conditioning is lost through those. So we would make sure to involve the historical society or whoever the powers that be are that govern those things, and make sure everything looks as it should, but is still energy efficient. So that's definitely a consideration. We're never going to start swinging hammers unless we know we're able to.
Thank you. And I guess relative to the swimming pool, you mentioned this a little earlier, that it's more or less a lost cause, I think, is how I'm characterizing it probably a little cynically, but I think that's probably the nuts and bolts of the situation. And yet in the business case, it one of the highest cost per square foot. It still seems responsible to me that we should try and reduce our overhead down there. So I guess I'd ask for a second look at that. Maybe the building only has 5 years. I'd like to think that it has much longer, but I think I don't want to write it off at this point. I'd like to extract as much utility out of it and save be as good a steward as we can with the property. So I guess I'd make a pitch to do whatever we can down there. I mean, without going overboard.
Absolutely. We know it's a great asset to the community. And obviously it's one of the biggest energy users. It's just, the systems that truly need to be replaced are extremely expensive up front and have a very long payback period. But there are still small things that we could do there. We could probably make some building envelope improvements, things like sealing up windows and doors. Obviously, LED light fixtures would be a really quick and easy way to make some improvements there. So it's definitely not off the table. It's just within the context of my first stab at the financial overview. We're not sure it can fit, but a lot can change during the investment grade audit. That's where, the aquatic center would certainly be evaluated in the context of that investment grade audit. It would be on the list for at least that look and that evaluation.
Okay, that'd be great. We really like it when people can squeeze 3 dimes out of a quarter.
Understood.
Council, any further questions? If not, I think we'd be ready for a motion. Julie?
I was just going to say, I'm ready to make a motion. If we're done with the discussion, I'd like to move forward on this and authorize the city to pay for the audit.
And
I
I'm
say
sorry,
that
actually,
wrong?
I think the request is to direct staff to start an RFP.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'd like to authorize the city to send out an RFP. And I guess it would be up to the city really to determine, I would imagine, rather than us determining how many bids you want to get. There is reference that you may not want to review 12 bids. I'd be really certainly expect that at least one of them, if you're going to limit the number of bids, would be Schneider, because we've heard so much about them and your good history. But anyway, that's sorry, that's not the motion. I move to ask the city administrator to go forward with putting out RFPs. Second.
Motion a second. Okay, any further discussion? Let's vote.
We have a 7-0 vote in favor.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Natalie?
Yes, she had her.
Okay,
thumb up,
okay,
so-
great. All right. My
It's a
bad. I wasn't paying
7 vote.
attention. I'm glad you were. Great. Thanks, Natalie. Okay, thanks, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Okay, just a gratuitous editorial remark. I mean, we started off, we had several people during our public comment section, reference sustainability and energy. And it seems like this would do an awful lot towards that end. So I think that's in concert with the community's sensibilities. Great. Okay, I think we got one more item here. First reading of ordinance number 0823, an ordinance adding a new chapter 2.10 of the City of Manitou Springs Municipal Code concerning task forces and working groups. And we had a draft of the ordinance in our packets. Mr. Parker, do you want to kick off or?
Okay, I'm happy to do that. Thanks. So this ordinance was requested by city council, I believe a month or so ago, or maybe a little longer. Because we've been having some concerns about which groups are actually official city formed working groups or task forces. And some of the concerns that, I articulated were that if it's an official city committee, board, working group, whatever you want to call it, formed by the city council, it's basically subject to a lot of the public laws dealing with public entities, like open meetings, open records. You have to make sure that their meetings are open to the public. You want to make sure that if people are making statements, that it's clear that they are either are or not a formal city group. What I was asked to do was to basically create an ordinance that sort of tries to clarify when a group is actually an official city group. There wasn't really a great name for it, so I called them task forces or working groups. Right now, you already have a whole section in your code that deals with official boards, committees, and commissions, like your planning commission, HPC, all that, and they've all got their own specific section. They've been formed by ordinance. Everything's clear about what their authority is, but you don't have anything about the sort of ad hoc task forces or working groups. And so I thought it would be a good idea to get something in your code that addresses how they're formed. So if there's any confusion about whether a group is just a group of citizens who are interested in city issues versus an actually officially formed group by the city council, you can look to the code and you can say, hey, here's how we do this. And you can distinguish between the two. Sort of the short of it is that the sole means to create an official task force or an official city working group is via a resolution of the city council. That resolution would generally lay out the purpose of the group, its membership, and its duration of existence. And that way it's, if there's no resolution forming some group that might call itself the Manitou Springs official, whatever, it's not an official group, even though it's called that. And, the city is still free to provide funding to some citizen groups if they feel like it's appropriate. City's still free to provide resources for them. City's still free to hear from them and listen to them in city council meetings, or even have staff attend their meetings. But the concern is that if you don't, those sort of activities and those sort of things may make a non-official group look like a city group. And this allows you to still do that for unofficial groups, but it makes clear which one's which. So that's sort of the short of it.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Council, comments or questions?
I move to
Julie?
adopt the ordinance.
Let's see here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
Natalie, yeah, comments?
I just had a quick question. Currently, is it just Hiawatha Gardens? Is that
Natalie,
our
can't
only
hear you.
official?
Stand by.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just now we heard something.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Is Hiawatha Gardens our only official task force right now?
we're getting some reverb.
I can text somebody.
Okay, Natalie, we're working on our side here.
Okay.
Mayor, she asked if Hiawatha Gardens is our only current task force. I believe that's what you said, right? Okay.
That's correct.
That's my understanding.
And I believe that's the only current task force that we have at this point. Yes.
And in my understanding is the action work group is an informal group. It's not an official city group. Natalie, maybe we answered your question, or did you have further comments?
No, that's fine. I was just curious to see who would be impacted by today's.
So further discussion. So Julie made a motion here. Yeah, we need a second.
I'll second it.
Do we have a second? Okay. Any further discussion, Natalie? Any further? Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and vote then. Oops. Sorry, Judy. Natalie, we take that as a yes vote.
And that was a yes vote, correct? Because I was.
Yes, Natalie voted yes.
7-0 in
Okay,
favor.
7 okay. So the ordinance is passed on first reading. So we would anticipate having that on second reading 2 weeks from tonight on June 20th. Jeff, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, it's time for council correspondence. Anybody have anything? Michelle?
I had some residents with the concern with parking. So
Hey, can you get a little closer to the
Oh,
microphone,
yes.
please?
So I've had a couple of residents approach me regarding parking. With the parking meters, we do have the 30 minutes free. But then when someone say is 5 minutes over their 2-hour parking, they're getting a ticket right away. So if maybe there could be a 30-minute waiver or, before they get that ticket. Otherwise, they're having to go down to parking and mobility to dispute that. Thank you.
Okay. Any, Nancy?
Yeah, I was, since the mayor wasn't here, I was invited to go to the emergency management plan tabletop exercise they had a couple of weeks ago. And all the division chiefs were there and a bunch of the fire and police were there. And it was put on by the regional emergency management folks here and that we've heard from previously. It was very good. And I think it really did a nice job, at least for me, of confidence building in our staff. Because to hear the discussions and everyone's knowledge of what to do in what situations was very, like I said, confidence building. Secondly, the mayor's bicycle ride is this Friday at 5 o'clock at Buffalo Lodge, if anyone would like to attend. It's like the 5th year that they're doing it, I think. So should be fun.
Great, thank you. John, Julie?
I had some people talk about the Hiawatha Gardens building. And I said, I really wasn't able to answer the question. They wanted to know, when is it at least gonna look better? And so I wanted to know, I wasn't sure where we left off. I think the last I heard was that we were going to do some facelift kind of painting and roof repair. And I haven't heard anything about whether that's scheduled or what's happening with that. But I think that would be worth doing. Does anybody know? Do you know, Nancy, since you're on
There'll
that
be
task
an
force?
update to council, I believe, in July.
Yeah, July 11th, it's a work session.
So
There
does
will
that
be-
mean, I just want to know if an RFP's gone out yet or not?
An
Does that mean-
RFP for the roof did go out and came back. And it was not within the, I would talk with Dole to get more information on the roof. So I'm not comfortable in answering those questions about the roof in particular.
We can provide an update. I'm sorry, I don't know that, and neither does Roy, so we can check with Dole and send an update.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Judith?
Well, I didn't want the evening to pass without at least addressing the 3 residents that spoke tonight about the desire for a sustainability advisory board, and if the council was to be interested in pursuing at least the discussion thereof. I do have a recommendation that we have our sister city, Colorado Springs, has with the leadership of Samantha Bailey, who is their sustainability coordinator, put together a board and a scope of work that they're working on. And she is willing to come and speak to us about what they are doing and how it's functioning. So if we were to be interested in pursuing that, and I believe there were 162 signatures. Of course, I don't know if they're all, vetted signatures, but I think the community has spoken, and I think that we need to address the possibility that maybe we do need a sustainability advisory board, or at least a discussion thereof.
Thank you. Okay. Let's go to the city administrator's report. Roy?
Yeah, we're just gonna continue to clean out storm drains with all this wet weather. So far, it's been going pretty well with the drainage, and then we'll continue with paving once we can. And so far, we got a couple roads done, but we'll continue with that. So that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Denise?
Yeah, I just want to mention last night, we did the celebration of the Citizens Academy, and those that attended, I think it was well received, and all the participants really enjoyed being a part of that. And they hats off to all of them. It was for 9 weeks, 3 hours every week, which is a huge commitment on all of their parts. So I wanted to recognize them for that. City Hall, as you can see, we are continuing the remodel. The first round of inspections will occur this Thursday, and the dumpster will be emptied on Friday. Plan Manitou, we got the grant. All of you saw that. So we were able to get that grant. We're preparing the RFP for that. And then the library, the construction drawings are at regional. We just paid a $2,000 fee for that, and they'll be getting that processed as we move forward. So I'll keep you updated as we get information on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, we do have one other topic for tonight, an executive session. So I will go ahead and read that. An executive session for the purposes of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators pursuant to section 5.1D of the Manitou Springs Municipal Charter concerning the due diligence related to the potential purchase of the Chase Bank property, 484 Manitou Avenue. So we'd entertain a motion to go into executive session. The second motion,
Second.
a second. Okay, all in favor, vote aye.
Who was the motion maker?
Julie made the motion and Nancy second, or
Sorry.
Judith second, excuse me.
Push my button.
Let's go ahead and vote. And Natalie votes yes.
7-0 in favor.
Okay.
And just for confirmation, so Natalie is staying on for this, correct?
I would like to. Okay. Can you hear me? Should I call in for this?
Is that what it reads? I'm just forgetting what we did.
Yeah, she can't stay on because Natalie, unless if you want to come back real quick, we'll take a break. Because the new ordinance that we passed after the executive says all executive sessions have to be in person.
Except for an emergency situation, which is not this.
Yes. So Natalie, do you want to
I'm
head?
not.
Okay.
I trust you all.
Okay. I guess in that case, we'll let you drop off, Natalie, and we'll see you next week. If not soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Judy, we need a couple minutes here to transition over. Okay, why don't we take a 5-minute break?